In boxing, most fighters train for power, others train for speed, but a few rare fighters train for something far more dangerous: intelligence. Terence Crawford has built his career not just on physical ability, but on his ability to read opponents and adapt inside the ring. Round by round, he studies their habits, he watches their reactions, he analyzes their timing, and slowly, the fight begins to change. Punches that once landed start missing, openings disappear, until his opponent realizes something unsettling. Crawford has figured them out. That kind of dominance doesn't come from talent alone. It comes from a very specific kind of preparation. Training designed not just to build strength, but to sharpen the mind inside the chaos of a fight. From brutal sparring sessions to mastering the rare art of switch hitting, every part of Crawford's preparation is built around one goal: to outthink the man standing in front of him. Terence Crawford was born on September 28, 1987, in Omaha, Nebraska. And if you don't know much about Omaha, understand this: it is not a city that gets a lot of shine in the boxing world. It's not New York, it's not Los Angeles, it's not Philadelphia. But Omaha shaped Crawford in ways that no other city could have. He grew up in a neighborhood where violence was ordinary. Not sensationalized, not dramatized, just ordinary. It was the kind of environment where a young man either gets consumed by the streets or finds something that pulls him in a different direction. For Crawford, that something was boxing. He started training at a very young age, drawn to the gym, the way a lot of kids from tough backgrounds are, not necessarily because of a dream, but because the gym offered structure, discipline, and a place to put all of that restless energy. He began working with trainer Brian McIntyre, who would go on to become one of the most important people in his professional life. McIntyre wasn't just a corner man. He became a big brother, a strategist, and eventually a co-architect of everything Crawford would become. But Crawford's path was not clean or straightforward. As a teenager, he was involved in street life. He was shot twice, not once, twice. And there was a very real possibility that boxing would have simply been a chapter that never got written. Most people don't survive those kinds of chapters, and the ones who do often carry wounds that keep them from ever fully committing to anything. Crawford somehow took the opposite path. The near-death experiences didn't slow him down. They clarified him. He came back to the gym with a seriousness that wasn't there before. The streets had taught him that life could be taken away in a second, and that meant that every minute inside the gym was a minute that mattered. He built his amateur career in relative obscurity, competing and developing while the rest of the country had no idea who he was. He compiled a strong amateur record, but Crawford was never a decorated amateur the way some world champions are. He didn't dominate international competitions or walk into the professional ranks with Olympic medals around his neck. What he had was something quieter, but arguably more valuable. Thousands of hours of ring time with a coach who believed in him, and a burning desire to figure out what he was truly capable of. He turned professional in 2008, and the early years were exactly what you'd expect from a young fighter coming out of the Midwest without major promotional backing. He was fighting in small venues, building rounds, learning on the job. Angles were different. And even then, there was something in the way he processed information inside the ring that stood out. He wasn't just reacting, he was thinking. The switch hitter's advantage. In boxing, few things disrupt an opponent's preparation more than facing a true switch hitter. Terence Crawford isn't just comfortable punching with both hands, he can operate as a complete fighter in either stance, orthodox or southpaw, with the same balance, timing, and precision. That level of ambidexterity is extremely rare. Many fighters claim to switch hit, but most are dominant in one stance and only functional in the other. When the pressure rises, they return to what feels natural. Crawford is different. He can fight entire stretches of a bout from either side without losing effectiveness. Much of that ability was developed early under his longtime trainer Brian McIntyre. McIntyre had Crawford train extensively from both stances. Not as a trick, but as a way to deepen his understanding of boxing itself. By learning to fight as both an orthodox boxer and a southpaw, Crawford began to see the ring from two perspectives at once. He understood the angles that trouble each stance because he had attacked and defended from both. That gave him a unique advantage in ring IQ. Crawford didn't just learn combinations from both sides. He learned how each stance thinks, reacts, and creates openings. In a fight, he often processes the action with a wider frame of reference than most fighters, and he doesn't switch stances randomly. He does it with purpose. Crawford will observe how an opponent reacts to certain angles, then switch to create traps. One moment he's inviting pressure from orthodox, the next he pivots southpaw and fires a counter from an angle the opponent didn't anticipate. There's also a psychological cost for the opponent. Every time Crawford changes stance, the entire geometry of the fight changes. The lead hand, the power hand, the angles, even the distance. By the middle rounds, opponents are constantly recalculating, spending mental energy just trying to keep up. And while they're thinking, Crawford is already adapting. Conditioning for control. There is a common misconception about elite boxing conditioning, and it goes something like this. If a fighter is in good shape, they can fight. But conditioning in boxing is not just about being able to go 12 rounds without gassing out. Real boxing conditioning is about being able to think clearly, move precisely, and execute technically demanding skills when every muscle in your body is screaming at you to stop. That is a completely different standard, and Terence Crawford trains to that standard with a level of commitment that defines his entire camp preparation. Crawford's training weeks during fight camp are structured around volume and intensity, but the specific philosophy behind his conditioning is tied directly to his boxing style. Because Crawford fights at different rhythms. He can be explosive, he can be patient, he can turn a fight into a war, or he can make it a chess match. His conditioning has to support all of those modes. He can't just train to run long distances or to go hard for 3 minutes at a time. He has to be ready for any pace, any rhythm, and any energy demand that a fight might require. His conditioning work begins with the basics that have defined boxing training for generations. Road work remains a constant part of Terence Crawford's preparation. Early morning runs build the endurance required to sustain a high pace over 12 rounds, and they form the aerobic base that supports everything else he does in the gym. These runs are not casual jogs. They are structured to build stamina, strengthen the legs, and prepare his body for the constant movement required inside the ring. Inside the gym, one of the most consistent parts of Crawford's routine is jump rope. It may look simple, but for fighters it is one of the most effective conditioning tools in the sport. Jumping rope develops rhythm, balance, and foot coordination while also building cardiovascular endurance. The constant bouncing movement closely mirrors the footwork used in boxing, helping Crawford stay light on his feet and maintain mobility deep into a fight. Resistance bands are another regular element of his training. Crawford uses them to strengthen the muscles that control punching and defensive movement. Shadowboxing with resistance bands forces the body to work harder through each motion, building both endurance and stability in the shoulders and core. Over time, this type of work helps make his punches faster and more controlled when the resistance is removed. Crawford also incorporates sled work into his conditioning. Pushing and pulling weighted sleds builds powerful legs and reinforces the kind of explosive drive that fighters use when closing distance or throwing combinations. The resistance forces the body to generate force from the ground up, strengthening the same chain of muscles responsible for punching power and aggressive forward movement. Weight training in his camp is focused strictly on athletic performance. The goal isn't to add muscle mass, but to develop strength that directly translates to boxing. Exercises emphasize explosive movement, core stability, and functional strength, the kind that improves punching power, balance, and the ability to change direction quickly. This approach ensures that Crawford becomes stronger without sacrificing the speed and mobility that define his style. The result of this conditioning system is a fighter whose energy holds up deep into fights. Crawford often appears just as sharp in the later rounds as he did early on, maintaining movement, precision, and power when many opponents begin to slow down. That level of endurance is not accidental. It is the product of disciplined conditioning built through years of focused, practical training. Technical training. Terence Crawford's boxing training is built around repetition and precision. Every session in the gym is focused on sharpening technique, improving timing, and making every movement inside the ring more efficient. Under the guidance of his longtime trainer Brian McIntyre, the goal isn't simply to stay sharp, it's to constantly refine the details that separate elite fighters from everyone else. Every drill has a purpose, and every round in the gym is treated as an opportunity to sharpen his craft. One of the most important parts of Crawford's routine is shadowboxing. It's where he rehearses movement, combinations, and defensive reactions without distraction. Crawford is known for taking this work outside the gym as well, sometimes shadowboxing outdoors even in harsh winter conditions, moving through his punches while snow falls around him. It's a simple drill, but it allows him to visualize opponents, practice switching stances, and sharpen his rhythm before ever touching a bag. These sessions help him focus purely on movement, balance, and the flow of his offense and defense. Heavy bag work follows, where technique meets power. On the heavy bag, Crawford practices full combinations with force, focusing on timing, accuracy, and body mechanics. Each round is used to refine how punches flow together, making sure every shot lands with balance and control. The bag absorbs the power, allowing him to throw hard while maintaining proper form and conditioning. It's also where he works on sustaining punching output, preparing his body for the intensity of real fight exchanges. His mitt and pad work with trainer Brian McIntyre is one of the most intense parts of camp. The sessions are fast, unpredictable, and highly technical. McIntyre constantly calls out combinations, angles, and defensive reactions, forcing Crawford to think and react in real time. These mitt sessions simulate the speed and chaos of a real fight, sharpening Crawford's reflexes while reinforcing precise combinations and counters. The pace can change instantly, pushing Crawford to stay mentally sharp while executing clean technique. Crawford also spends time working on specialized bags that sharpen accuracy and rhythm. The aqua bag, filled with water, provides a unique resistance that helps fighters feel the impact of clean punches while reducing stress on the hands. The double-end bag develops timing, precision, and defensive reactions as it snaps back quickly after each strike. Meanwhile, the speed bag helps build rhythm, shoulder endurance, and hand-eye coordination, keeping his hands fast and fluid during long training sessions. These tools focus on the smaller details that help refine a fighter's control and accuracy. All of this preparation ultimately leads to sparring, the closest thing to a real fight during training camp. Crawford works with experienced sparring partners who replicate different styles and strategies. These sessions allow him to test the techniques he has drilled throughout camp, making adjustments and sharpening his instincts under realistic pressure. By the time he steps into the ring on fight night, he has already practiced the movements, reactions, and strategies countless times in sparring. The mind behind the fighter. One of the traits that separates Terence Crawford from many elite fighters is the way he approaches boxing as a mental contest as much as a physical one. Crawford and his team study opponents with a clear analytical focus. He doesn't just watch fights casually, he looks for patterns in behavior and decision-making. Crawford studies how an opponent behaves in different moments of a fight. He looks at how they start early rounds, how they react under pressure, and what combinations they rely on when they want to finish a round strongly. These habits often reveal predictable tendencies that can be exploited later. He also pays close attention to how opponents respond to adversity. Some fighters clinch when hurt, others become reckless, and some begin throwing desperate body shots. Crawford catalogues these reactions, building a mental profile that he can recognize once he's inside the ring. But Crawford's mindset wasn't shaped only inside the boxing gym. Away from training, he often spent time playing games that demanded patience, timing, and strategy. Card games, for example, forced him to read people, stay calm, and think several moves ahead. He also enjoyed chess, where every move carries consequences, and a single mistake can change the entire outcome. Games like billiards and table tennis demanded precision, focus, and quick reactions, skills that translate naturally into boxing. These activities weren't just casual hobbies. They sharpened the same mental qualities Crawford relies on during a fight: observation, calculation, and control under pressure. By the time Crawford steps into